Okay, so we're going to be using char cloth as the primary tinder source because I'm out here, and you might not be able to tell because we bumped the ISO up for this video to look lighter so that you could actually see what we're doing, but it's already starting to get dark. The ground is already getting some dew cover on it. The fine fibrous material of plant life is already getting a little bit damp. You're not able to spark that with a spark rod. Even using a lighter isn't going to do much for you. I do know that pine resin, I'm sure you guys know too, pine resin sits in pine needles, so we're going to grab some of those off of the trees, put them in my tinder pouch, and then go to the fire site. Hey everybody, Brad with Full Spectrum Survival. When a disaster strikes, you are going to need a fire. There are very few times that you're not. Some of those would be if you're being pursued and you want to avoid detection. Others would be if you're in a hostile environment and people might be able to get your signature by heat or by smell. They might be able to tell where you were or that you had been there. But that's very limited. Most of the time during a survival situation, you are going to need a fire. You're going to need to purify your water, cook your food, stay warm at night, and do all of the manners of things. Start your next fire, be prepared for the next time that you'll need it when it's going to be raining. All of these things you're going to need a fire for. When you need it the most is when fire making is going to be the hardest to make. And that makes sense. When it's so cold outside that your hands are shaking and you can't catch your breath, that means it's so cold that you really need that fire. Your body has to have it to survive. That's when you need it the most. When it's raining at night and the temperatures are going to drop below 60 degrees, you're already wet, you're going to go into hypothermia at night. You need that fire at that time, but it's the hardest to make because all the items around you are soaked. They're inundated with water and you can't make a fire. On our last video where we talked about making char cloth, a lot of friends of the channel came out and said, I've made char cloth, which is really an amazing thing. I mean, actually, us all getting out here and doing this is the entire reason we're doing this backyard or at-home survival series. So friends of the channel said, I went out and I made it. Now what? We had some people send in information showing what they did next with their fires, how they started it. I want to show you at least a couple of different ways that you can make a fire here today. Okay, so we're going to be using char cloth as the primary tinder source because I'm out here, and you might not be able to tell because we bumped the ISO up for this video to look lighter so that you could actually see what we're doing, but it's already starting to get dark. The ground is already getting some dew cover on it. The fine fibrous material of plant life is already getting a little bit damp. You're not able to spark that with a spark rod. Even using a lighter isn't going to do much for you. I do know that pine resin, I'm sure you guys know too, pine resin sits in pine needles, so we're going to grab some of those off of the trees, put them in my tinder pouch, and then go to the fire site. Now, even if it did rain, these pine needles are going to dry a lot quicker than the stuff on the ground. It's not going to be conductive to the other wetness there. It's not going to be touching any of it. So even if you got a damp rain, you're going to these are going to dry quicker. They're going to be your best source of fire making material. Now this is one of my primary fire sites here on the property. As you can see, I have a rock reflector laid up. I've got some rocks laid to the side. What that's going to do is provide me with a safe place to make a fire. That way I can walk away if I have some coals running there. So I want to show you a couple of different ways to make a fire. I've got my fire pouch here. It has a couple of different things in it. Let's go ahead and talk about them. The first thing, of course, that everybody should have is a lighter. You just can't think about survival and preparedness without a lighter. They're easy. I mean, you just flick it and you have fire. But this alone isn't going to provide you with fire all of the time, not even most of the time. You're going to run into scenarios where you can't find tinder still or pine needles or anything like that. And this lighter, even though you light it, you would have to hold it underneath of the smaller kindling just to let that ignite, dry it out, and then have that ignition source for the fuel above it that's also going to be inundated with water. It gets tricky quick. So in every fire kit that we have another source of prolonged fire. I really suggest everybody put this in your fire kit today. It's just a lighter, and this isn't a Bic lighter. I'm not going to pay $3 for a lighter. It's a cheap Walmart brand. Comes in a multi-pack. I think you get $2, you get 8 lighters. And these little tea candles. Why? Because they do the work for you. It provides you with a small cup that you can put down on something, not worry about it catching the entire thing on fire. It's going to provide a longer light source and heat source. I think everybody should have this. And I don't need to show you, but it's just as easy as melting the wax off of the candle. You put it down and you're going to build your fire on top of that. So using pine needles today, you see we would just put a teepee, and I'm not going to go through the entire fire making process every time, but it allows you to just build the fire. No questions asked, nothing going on. Now you know that we make our own wax balls here. These are very similar to a candle. We take candle wax and we melt cotton balls down in them. So this is a wax infused cotton ball. I'm able to peel off a little bit of this ball here, and you're going to get around I would say a good 5-minute burn time just from this. You see it's a little bit windy, but once enough of the cotton melts and ignites the wax around it, this will sit in a very windy environment and will not go out. So it provides you with another way to make and keep a fire. Okay, let's kind of go in order from easiest to hardest. Of course, a lighter and a candle is going to be the easiest. Everybody should be able to do that. The kids in our groups should be prepared to start a fire using just a lighter and a candle. It allows them to step away. Of course, we can also use a match and a candle. I think everybody should have some matches at their disposal, usually in the home setting. Again, this is really basic stuff. So if you're lighting a fire with a match, and you use a lot of pressure down the middle of the match, you're going to break it. Now you're going to have to touch even closer to the ignition end of it. You're going to run the risk of burning yourself there, and you're not going to give yourself as much fuel to light your fire with. What you want to do is take your match. I'm sure that everybody at home knows to do this. You're going to put your finger, usually an index finger, on the ignition end, and you're going to scrape it with your finger down on it, providing pressure. This is going to ignite the chemical reaction that lights this. Now these go out very quickly in windy settings, so you're going to want to make sure that you fully ignite it and place it right underneath your tinder source. Again, those are two very simple ways to go about making a fire, and something that I think everybody should have on hand. Neither of those take very much tinder. That is, even kindling. They don't even take very much kindling because the fuel is already there. The candle provides the fuel. It allows you to dry out any damp wood that you have at your disposal. Same thing with the match. It provides wood on it so that you have a longer time to get a fire started. The next easiest is a ferrocerium rod. These throw out very hot sparks, and they're good for thousands and thousands of uses. For the price, I think everybody should have one, but you're going to need a tinder source, and that's where our char cloth that we made the other day comes into play. So for each one of these, I'm not going to go through the process of making an entire teepee or making a fire lay and showing you what to do with that. I'm just going to show you the char cloth ignited, and then let's get an actual flame from it using the pine needles. It doesn't take much. You can see it already lit there. Now you're going to want to take this and put it inside of your pine needles, and you're going to need a decent amount to get an ignition. You'll be able to hold it like this, and you can see it smoking a little bit. You want to cover just enough so that you can blow on it, but you are not just losing that heat that it's creating. Pull it away so that you're not breathing in the smoke. Take a deep breath. And you have ignition. After the char cloth comes after the ferrocerium comes the Flint and Steel method. The ferrocerium really came from the idea of flint and steel, and the pioneers and those before them found that flint, when struck with steel, was so hard that it would tear off a piece of the steel at such a temperature that you could ignite char cloth with, or you could ignite tinder with. So I have two forms here. One is a black flint. This is mostly pure with flint. I can hit it almost anywhere and get a spark. And then this is locally found flint that we found here on the property, which is really neat. You're going to want to grab your char cloth And there's two different methods with flint and steel. One is to put it underneath as you're striking down, and another method is to put it on top because, I really find that it's 50-50 whether the spark's going to jump up and hit the char cloth or it's going to go down. I tend to do it on the downward side so that I'm not destroying my char cloth by hitting it with my steel. Okay, you see a piece caught right there. You want to make sure that it doesn't fly off to hit something else. You're going to grab your pine needles just like before. Make sure you sandwich it in there and follow the same practice. And we have ignition. Okay, so next on the list from hardest to easiest is, actually we forgot one thing. I was going to do the fire piston, which uses the pressure of air contained within this tube to ignite a charred material. But I remembered after talking with one of our friends of the channel that I wanted to do a broken lighter and show you that you can make a fire from a broken lighter just because the very small sparks that are needed to ignite butane will also ignite your char cloth. Okay, so I've got a lighter here. You can see that it is broken. All of the butane has leaked out of it, or the gaseous material has leaked out of it. I can get a spark, but I can't get any sort of ignition. So you're going to take your char cloth, and if you just put it up to it, you're gonna have a hard time getting ignition. I was able to get a little bit. One of the better ways to do it is to pinch a little bit and place it down inside of the hole of your lighter. This is going to place the char cloth as close as possible to the sparking source and allow you to capture almost all of the sparks that are coming off of it. Okay, we were able to catch it there. And you're going to want to baby it again. Put it inside of your pine needles. Make sure that you can sandwich it in there. And you see how easy it is to lose a piece of it. And we have ignition. Okay, so our last, and as far as what I have with me, our most difficult way of making a fire is the fire piston. This uses pressure of the air caught inside of this tube. As the pressure gets pushed down, it becomes so hot, that air becomes so hot so as to ignite the oxygen in the air and subsequently igniting any charred material that you have in this small container here. So we're going to put some charred material right inside of here. Now this little hole won't allow for very much, so what I found the best thing to do is to pack it in there and then pull away what you're not going to be using. And you can see we're pretty well packed there. If you pack it down too much, you're going to run into the risk of not providing enough surface area for the ignition that does take place to hit there. So you're going to put the fire piston in, and what we're going to do here is give it a smack on this rock. I'm going to bring it back up to here to look at the spark and see if the char cloth took. And you can see right there, it lit it. We're going to add some more charred material to it because that little bit wouldn't be enough to ignite our pine needles. We're going to create our pine needle sandwich, I guess is the best way to explain it. and we have ignition. So this is really a couple of different ways. Let's see, we had our Egyptian fire piston, we had our broken lighter, so that's 2, matches is 3, flint and steel is 4, and lighter and candles is 5. So those are 5 different ways that you can make a fire. Again, I recommend everybody at the first go, please put a lighter and a tea candle inside of your pack. Tea candle is really the best way. You might get more juice out of a tapered candle, but it doesn't provide you with that safe to hold part of it that's going to catch and hold on to that wax to give you even more time to dry out stuff around you. I've been in the woods when it is just so wet that you can barely get anything to ignite, and having that tea candle there to just sit underneath your small pencil lead size kindling and dry that out before your fire gets going is really a lifesaver. I suggest that everybody please put a fire kit together and get out there and use it. We had so many great people email us and show us what they did with their charred cloth. If you get out there and put a fire kit together, please send me a picture or a small video of it. I'd love to see it and maybe feature it in one of the videos here. Being a part of this community is really an awesome thing for all of us. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, please email me at fullspectrumsurvival@gmail.com, and we appreciate you being a part of this community. From Kelley and I to you and yours, please stay safe and keep watch.